Hello gathered friends, and happy Bionicle Day! I didn't have time to make a full video for the occasion, but I figured now would be a good time to reissue the first episode of Legends of the Bionicle, my Bionicle retrospective series / walkthrough and whatnot. While I do think the majority of the episode is perfectly salvageable, there were some bits that I felt didn't fit the tone of the series going forward, and I actually talked about it a bit in episode 2, and thus I have given them a small re-edit. But as this is originally a 2019 video, do expect it to fall within my 2019 standards. As best as I can replicate them anyway. And I hope to see you guys come back next year for more videos under my new Uncle Benis title. Take care. Hello, my friends! Man, Bionicle's been really getting a lot of attention in the past few years, hasn't it? Seriously, from movies to video games to toys, the franchise has been making its way around the reviewer circuit. But rarely do people acknowledge the thing that I find most important about it. The canon. In fact, a lot of people show a rather insulting lack of knowledge on it, sometimes while also toting themselves as fans or some similar qualifier. They make it seem unimportant, when the story is what drove everything and set it apart. Despite all of the work put into the lore of Bionicle, it's largely ignored by people who just don't give enough of a crap. But we'll focus on that a bit more when we get to the movies. It does factor into why I decided to do this series despite already skipping ahead to Maze of Shadows last year though. In that review, when covering the canon, I presumed that anybody watching it was already familiar with the lore. But I soon found myself to be mistaken in that regard. Not due to comments, since that review is largely ignored unfortunately, but rather through just, watching other videos. Now granted, all the context you really need for that is Legends of Metro Nui, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but I should have known better. So, beyond that stolen bit from Mask of Light, what else do you need to know going into this story? Well, let's just use the first page of the comic. The island of Motunui was once a paradise, until the entity known as Makuta arrived. Well, until he started going by Pterodax for reasons that don't make much sense, but we'll address that eventually. Transforming it into a land of darkness and evil. The natives call it Tohunga, well, until they start going by Matoran for reasons that make a lot more sense. Yeah, we're gonna use post-Maori lawsuit names, unless the old ones come up, just FYI. And their leaders, the Turaga, have waited and hoped for heroes who will conquer Makuta and save their home. Now their waiting has come to an end. 6 mighty warriors, known as Toa, have arrived on Motunui. Each controls a force of nature: fire, air, earth, water, stone, and ice. But to triumph over Makuta, they must gather the Kanohi Masks of Power, which give them greater skills, abilities, and wisdom. The more masks they collect, the more powerful the Toa become. Finding the masks takes great courage, for Makuta controls the land, sea, and sky of Motunui. He also commands a host of terrible creatures known as Rahi, as well as the Manas. The Manas are Rahi, since Rahi is just the Matoran word for wildlife, or, more properly, animals. I've got the book, people, you can't fool me. Fierce predators with power no single Toa can withstand. If the Toa hope to win, they must find the power of the masks. So yeah, you might have noticed by all the stuff I read, but didn't comment on, that this is more recap than review. Well, that's because this series is meant to be an introduction to basic canon via the one consistent visual medium Bionicle has, the comics. We will also use some of the other visual mediums, but this will be our main one. We will also be referencing the books, relevant video games, and 2 separate wikis just to get the most definitive Bionicle walkthrough possible. With that said, let's turn the page and start reading. We begin on the shore of Motunui, where a canister is opening, and a being rises from the pieces scattered about, literally pulling himself together. His name is Kopaka. I have slept for so long. My dreams been dark ones. But now I am awakened. Now the scattered elements of my being are rejoined. Now I am whole, and the darkness cannot stand before me. The evil on this island is about to learn that justice can be very cold. My mask lets me see pathways not seen before, patterns of heat, even through the rock. And I see a visitor. Come out, little one, before you catch a chill. My new friend tries to flee, but a coating of ice beneath his feet will bring him sliding back to me. Yeah! Interesting. The power isn't me. The sword is but the focus. Dude, maybe watch where you're pointing that thing? I mean, have you seen what you can do to an avalanche? Who are you? And why were you watching me? I am a Toro. A Tohunga. I saw you come ashore. I've been waiting for you. All of us on Motunui have been waiting for you. You and the others. Now, if you can only find the masks of power. What others? What masks? His tale is broken. Incomplete. But is the tale told in my dreams? Or close to it? I have been summoned, I and others, to challenge a mighty evil. To defeat it, I will need great power. Careful, Kopaka! With great power comes great responsibility! Yeah, that had to come up at some point. Anyway, Kopaka decides to use Motoro as his guide to the masks. Motoro explains that they're hidden all over Motunui, some even guarded by Rahi under Makuta's control. However, he does know of one hidden in the place of far seeing. Unfortunately, they both encounter a Nui Rama that knocks them off a cliff, but Kopaka manages to save them both. Now I know you are the Toa, the one who will save us! There were easier ways for you to find out. What was that creature? And despite Motoro responding to that with what they are, Taraga Nuju is the one who continues the explanation. When they wear infected masks, they are servants of Makuta, and only one of the dangers you will face. Taraga, he's come! This is... I know who he is, Motoro. Oh, well, in that case, can we ask the more pressing question of why you're talking normally? For those of you who don't know, Taraga Nuju only speaks in the language of Rahi birds, due to reasons we'll discuss at a later date. And he even does this at private Taraga meetings, with Motoro as his translator. In fact, in Maze of Shadows, Nuju even notes that Motoro carries a heavy burden due to this. So I think Motoro ought to be asking a lot more questions here. And you can't say that this moment is retconned later as the canon stabilizes or something. Both of the Bionicle wikis I used for this just threw up their hands and were like, yeah, that happened. I mean, yeah, a casual glance might suggest that it's unwise to start clucking like a chicken or whatever at the amnesiac ice warrior, but they show Nuju using gestures to explain things to Kopaka, and they tell you to look at Bionicle.com for an explanation on that. And hey, the closest thing I could find to that says that's because of his bird talk. What even is this moment? Anyway, after Nuju explains what we basically already know, a brown Toa accidentally drops a rock slide onto Kopaka. His name is Bohatu. 3 guesses as to what voice I use for him. Sorry about that. I was practicing. Are you alright? I would be, if you weren't standing on me. I ship it. Anyway, after Kopaka frees himself from the rock slide, the 2 Toa climb up to the place of Farcine and retrieve the first of Kopaka's other masks, a Kanoe Hao. I can feel the power of this mask protecting me. Yet the powers of the Mask of Vision are still mine to use. He can feel the power! Anyway, after that, Kopaka tells Pohatsu that they have to move, since he sees strangers down there, and knows that they've got great power, but doesn't know if they're allies or enemies. Cut to the final panel, and HOLY CRAP! Okay, it's obvious that these are the other Toa, but look at Kopaka! His head is tiny, his arms are massive chonkers, and he might want to see a doctor about that deal in his crotch. Also, Tahu is doing well with my avatar's expressions. Alright, let's discuss the art. I'm actually okay with the artwork of Carlos de Anda. Sorry if I butchered that, dude. It's sort of stylized with various scratches and shines add for detail. The colors are sometimes off, but hey, that isn't on him. Comic Vine lists another artist on the cover, but also lists Carlos as having also worked on the cover? Maybe Tahu was drawn by another artist and Carlos did everything else, since Tahu seems a bit more on Mal than everybody else. But that's just speculation. We're not going to talk about the covers too much in this series, by the way, mainly because they aren't that impressive most of the time. This one is cool though, catches your eye, and it's just iconic. They homaged it a few times, I think. Anyway, on to issue 2, where the first page explains that the Toa have split up to find the masks. We open with the Turaga having their usual tabletop role-playing session. This is the tale of Motunui, as it has been told for so many years. In the time before time, when the world was new, the great spirit Motunui descended from the skies like a burning star. He walked the earth, and marveled at its beauty, and watched over all living things. But Motunui had been followed by his brother, the dark spirit Makuta. Makuta coveted this world and all that his brother had. Makuta cast a spell that made Motunui sleep. Then Makuta claimed this world, and darkness and death were everywhere. Yet all was not lost. The great being sent 6 mighty heroes, the Toa, to Motunui. 6 heroes with one destiny, to defeat Makuta and save our world. The Great Beings are kind of a complicated deal. Basically, they created Motunui in the Matoran universe. They create a lot of other things, but that's all you need to know for now. I only really bother with this scene to establish that they exist for you, because it has nothing to really do with the rest of the issue. Still, nice of them to explain the lore a little bit. Anyway, into the issue proper, and we see Liwa pulling Gali out of the water. And before you comment correcting me, I know that isn't the proper pronunciation of Lua's name. I do so on purpose, because that's the pronunciation that makes more sense to me. Let me explain it like this. Takoro, Tahu. Kokoro, Kopaka. Gakoro, Gali. Pokoro, Pohatu. Onukoro, Onua. Likoro, Lua? Admittedly, it also could be pronounced as Lekoro, but either way, Lua doesn't match up. Pronouncing it as Liwa maintains the synergy of the naming system. Sure, Onukoro has to add a letter, but that's in service to the synergy, not against it. If you're mad about me pronouncing it like this, either go make your own Bionicle retrospective series, or shut up! Anyway, Louie here says this as he saves Gali. Huh, now you see why I hate water. You should be more careful, Gali. Next time, I might not be here to save you. Thank you, Liwa, but I can look after myself. The waters are normally my ally, but these seem so strange, so angry. Water can't be angry. It can't be anything but wet. I'll stay in the treetops, well away from it. Yeah, you might notice a little something about Liwa's dialogue here. An odd lack of shoot speak. For those unaware, shoot speak, or tree speak at this point in the story, is the form of the Matoran language used by most Lee Matoran in the story. It's basically a faster form of speaking that combines 2 words into a single word to substitute for a number of longer words. For example, uptree means higher in a tree, cliffbound means trapped on a cliff, and deep wood means deep in the jungle. They also lengthen small words like Toa becoming Toa heroes, and terrible bad meaning awful, but I imagine those are more for flow than anything, and most words come out shortened. Here's a quick demonstration.
Walk? Ha! Not never. If you ride with me, there'll be no foot walking, just air flying.
Yeah, I've met people online who can do it, but it is very hard to learn. And since Greg Farshtey, the writer of this issue, apparently hates writing characters who use shoot speak, it does kind of make sense that he would avoid doing it this early on, but it does contradict canon. Anyway, this panel happens. Without water, there would be no trees. Where are you going? Up. So, what do you think of the other Toa? They are very noble and powerful. I regret that we will all be traveling our own paths, rather than working together. I don't. I'm going to find the 6th Kanohi Mask of Power, as the legends say, and free this island from Makuta. The last thing I want is someone else slowing me down. Did he just have a conversation with himself? Okay, for real, this is just poor work on the word bubbles. The clear order of the conversation is that Gali says the first and third lines, while Liwa has all the rest. However, they messed up the little arrows. And it honestly wouldn't be hard to fix this. The top bubble could have been connected to the bottom bubble very easily, and normally that's what comics do. But not only are they disconnected here, but the bottom bubble is also pointing towards Liwa. Nice work. Anyway, after Liwa swings away, Gali goes underwater and fights off a Tarakava, and Liwa looks for his next mask under the guidance of Turaga Matau. It's underwater. Gali would probably find this funny. The Toa of Air forced to go into the water? Which he hates? Then again, maybe she's climbing trees somewhere right now. Whoever hid these masks had a nasty sense of humor. Hey, if the Turaga Matoran know where all these masks are, why are they doing crap like sending Liwa underwater? If the locations of various masks match the element of a certain Toa, why are you making the Toa of another element get this mask? Heck, one of Kopaka's masks was on an island surrounded by lava! You almost died getting that! I know you want them to work together and stuff, as they do later, but maybe you shouldn't put them into situations where they might actually die? And yeah, Liwa is almost drowned by angry seaweed when he goes down. Holy crap, I just wrote that sentence. Anyway, Liwa retrieves the Mask of Speed, and we cut to Gali retrieving the Mask of Levitation from a mountain. Unfortunately, though, the mountain starts crumbling beneath her feet, and she just barely manages to get the mask and land safely. Next to some Nui Jaga. Cut to Liwa, and he gets attacked by a Nui Rama. And then a Makua? That's the closest my Rahi book has to it, at least. Though the masks are all wrong. Anyway, we end on a bit that I didn't mention. These two stories are being narrated by the Turaga of their village. And they end like this. These have been the tales of Gali, Toa of Water, and Liwa, Toa of Air. Perhaps the last we shall ever tell. Yeah, except you were clearly relayed this information by them later, so obviously they lived. Anyway, we open the last issue with a new narrator taking over.
I am the shape in the shadows. I am the darkness in the heart of Matanui. I live in the dread stories told by the Turaga around the village fires. The dark creatures, the Manas, the Rai, are my servants. I am Makuta. Those who dare to challenge me, as the Toa have done, will be defeated. Liwa's safety is an illusion, one the jaws of the Makua will dispel. Liwa will be the first to fall, and then... But what is this? No. Rahi cannot be defeated. Liwa may have escaped, but Gali, Toa of Water, is surely doomed.
The creatures are closing in. Great beings, grant me strength.
Who dares defy the will of Makuta?
You? Tahu? Gali, behind you!
So, the Toa now work together. Then they can fall together as well.
Okay, enough fanboying, let's get back to business. Gali falls in the water and has a vision with two large beings standing in front of her. Welcome to Toa Water. Do not be afraid. Your body is safe in the ocean's embrace. Only your mind has journeyed here to behold the future. What is this place? Who are you?
We are what you and the other Toa shall become. When each of you has found all the great masks of power, Then shall you be ready to join together and defeat Kuda. 3 of you shall become warrior and walk the path of wisdom. 3 shall become myself, Akamai, and walk the path of the warrior.
Remember, Ellie, only by uniting will the Toa find the strength to triumph. For now, child of the waters, farewell. Wait, I must know more. It's all right, Gally. The Rahi have fled. Tahu, I had the strangest vision. We can talk about it later. Anua has called a meeting. The others are waiting for us near his landing site. So anyway, the Toa all gather to discuss the obvious. In order to get all the masks, they have to work together more. Some members aren't up for it, but it's quickly interrupted by a volcano erupting. While Liwa and Anua create a trench to divert the lava, the other Toa fight Makuda's Rahi, working as a team to balance things a bit better. Also, Tahu's sword is drawn with a handle in one panel, and I think that's the only time something like that ever happens in the entire comic run of Bionicle. Anyway, after the battle, the Toa come back together. We have won our first battle, but there will be more. We must be prepared to fight them, separately and together. I almost feel sorry for Makuda, trying to take us all on. I have no use for teams, but I will assist when I'm needed. Same here. The masks of power are as good as ours. Then let Makuda tremble this day. We stand together until Motunui is free. And that's where the 2001 comics end. Yeah, I'm serious. When the 2002 comics start up, they get right into the Bo-Rock stuff. Which brings us into other media. You see, the unique thing about Bionicle is that its story is broken up between several mediums. The most consistent of these is the comics and the books. But this leaves some major gaps in one form of media or another. This means that you kind of have to piece the timeline together for yourself in some instances. But the 2001 canon is pretty complicated in that area. Every piece of Bionicle media covering this period has some attempts to line up with other bits, but also many times where a part of the other media is contradicted. For example, the part where Pohatu and Kopaka meet for the first time is copied almost verbatim in Tales of the Toa, the first book, but it's also greatly expanded upon. Okay, so that decanonizes the comics, right? Well, no, actually. You remember that vision Gali had? Well, while the scene wasn't adapted, she mentions it in Tales of the Toa. So clearly, the comics are canon. In addition, the book changes a lot of crap about the final battle with Makuda, even excluding a character entirely from those events, even though that character's actions influenced what would happen in the next year, mainly in terms of the main threat. This isn't even early canon dissonance either, because that book came out in 2003. The other reference material was already out. But still, Tales of the Toa is probably the most definitive telling of the 2001 story, from the perspective of the Toa at least. It kinda dragged on my first read, but the second read was actually kind of a breeze. And hey, it's not like it's too unavailable with sites like Wall of History around, so give it a shot if you haven't. Anyway, let's discuss the footage we'll be using for the finale to this storyline. The Motunui Online game. I've gotta be honest, I've never played the Motunui Online game. Not in full, at least. I keep on getting lost after the first mission, and the game isn't helping me too much. Basically, it's a point-and-click game where you take on the role of Takua, an amnesiac Tomatoran who goes around helping various characters around the island. It's a source of world building on the Matoran side of things, though the Toa do of course make appearances to help you along the way. The only real gripe I have with it, beyond the confusing nature of the gameplay, is that the flash animation it uses can get a bit awkward. Anyway, back to the story. After gathering all of their masks, the Toa gather at Kininui, a temple at the center of the island. They're going to get their golden masks, which are much more powerful, and attack Makuda. But they have the obvious problem that the Rahi might attack the temple while they're down there. But they see you and your company there, and they ask you to protect the temple while they fight Makuda. Before they go though, Gali establishes a psychic link with you so you can see what's happening down there while you fight off the Rahi, since you are the chronicler. Anyway, the Toa get their golden masks and go down into Makuda's lair. In your first vision, you witness the construction of the Toa Kaida, the two beings Gali saw in her vision. Basically, they're a combination of 3 Toa into one being. For those curious, a combination of all 6 would be considered a Toa Nui. Anyway, the Toa Kaida take separate paths and defeat a bunch of Manas along the way. When they enter the final gates, however, they find themselves being torn apart back into the Toa. Basically because they're in Makuta's lair. Baatu points out that not having the Toa Kaida in the final fight is a bad thing, but Gali says that the Kaida were just a physical form of their unity, and they still possess it in their hearts. And the others basically agree that it'll have to be enough. Before they go too far though, Gali informs Takua that she can't send him these little messages past the gate, and says that if he wants to fulfill his destiny and record this final battle, he will have to come down to them. Well, sheesh, Gali, I don't need a story that hard. Just tell me when you get back. I mean, if you can't survive this, then I'm good as dead. So anyway, yeah, we find our way down there just as the final battle begins. Makuta, we have come. What?
I have been waiting for you.
But you are...
I am that which you have sworn to protect.
Tell you, it's a trick. We must destroy him.
Destroy me. You cannot destroy me. No more than you can destroy the sea, or the wind, or the void.
You are like the sea. The sea bears life. The sea bore us.
I bore you, for I am nothing. And out of nothing you came, and it is into nothing you will go. I stand with Matanui side by side. I am his brother. The people of this world are builders, but look into their hearts, and you will find that they also have the power to destroy. I am that power. I am destruction, and I will destroy you.
But you are Buto Tahunga.
You expected something else? Something like this?
Only hope is to work together.
You cannot destroy me, for I am nothing.
So anyway, after presumably geeking out as much as I was at that scene, Takua digs himself out of the wreckage and comes across a canister with a strange creature inside. Unintentionally, he awakens it and all the other creatures around it as he flees, just barely getting out in time. Afterwards, he meets Taraka Bakama on a beach, who is basically like, "Oh, there you are," and talks about how their prophecies of Makuta's defeat ending their troubles has changed. Which would normally bring the credibility of the people making those prophecies into question, but this is Bionicle where you can actually fail your literal destiny, so we'll let this pass. Anyway, Bakama says to forget that for now, let's just party, as the game ends. 2001 is a strange year to analyze. A lot of setup is having to happen for a relatively out there premise, and when you're scattering it over a few different types of media, there are going to be teething problems. Any piece of Bionicle media covering that period is fun to read, and I certainly recommend all of them, even if I can't fully experience them myself yet. Just be prepared to put a little work in when putting stuff together. I'm Bento Fire, signing out.
When legends were young, one word was never spoken, for fear that the legend was true. That word was Bullrock. 6 breeds, unleashed in squads, a threat to the island of Matanui. The Borok carry a hidden secret, a power so strong that even the fate of the Torah is threatened. The power of the Krana. Live the legend at Bionicle.com.